experience of my imaginary person, Crystal, feeling like they did not have the support. They had a stepfather in their childhood that was verbally abusive. The mother was, let's say the mother worked a lot, and so she just kind of felt like she had to become resilient. She had to become so self-reliant, and she developed the idea that she had to prove her worthiness and her feeling lovable enough to the stepfather because he was harsh. So my imaginary person for today, Crystal, is dealing with this pattern of growing up feeling like they had to prove themselves due to verbal abuse and being put down. And also because the mother worked a lot, she grew up just feeling like she didn't have a lot of emotional support. So she felt like she had to be very, very self-reliant and had to prove herself, and that ultimately it was up to her to make sure she took care of everything she needed. And so asking for help was something that was very challenging for this person that I'm making up today for Crystal. And the reason I bring up this pattern is, so if we grow up trying to prove something, feeling guarded, feeling like we cannot ask for help, feeling like it's all up to us and it's not okay to feel vulnerable. So if Crystal grew up having this defense mechanism of feeling guarded, of feeling like she couldn't let her guard down because there was no one to really catch her, because the mother wasn't emotionally available. She was receiving this harshness, this verbal abuse from the stepfather and being put down. So then how does that manifest with her later on in life? Is she going within herself and just being as strong as she can be and really trying very, very, very hard in life in a way where there's not this allowance of receiving or being able to feel gentle with herself? And I think a lot of times, especially in our American society too, there's this push to achieve. There's this push to get it all done. There's just this constant pressure on the self. And I think a lot of times we don't understand how to not only get enough gentleness within our life, enough relaxation, but this idea of surrendering as well. I mean, this push doesn't allow space in our life for ease to come in, for flow to come in. So a lot of people talk about the idea of flow, like how do we get flow in our lives? How do we have this tapping into our own internal flow so we can create what we need in our lives, so we can have this freedom of creation, expression, the energy is flowing. Like how do we get to that space? But if we are pushing ourselves all the time, not only is there this constant level of doing where there's not enough space for flow to be created, there's not enough space for receiving, and being gentle with ourselves. So if our emotional body, like our inner child, like my example with Crystal today, if she grew up with this harshness and this idea that she had no one to fall back on because she didn't feel emotionally supported and she didn't feel good enough because she was being put down, how does that affect the space in her life to have this flow to receive and also to know when to surrender in life? So I'm really talking about gentleness, being able to be gentle with yourself, and also surrendering. So sometimes in life, let's say Crystal has some challenges within her life and she's trying to do it all on her own. Let's say she has a sibling. Crystal has a sibling. She has a sister, and she loves her sister so much. And her sister struggles with some issues that, let's say she has substance issues, and Crystal tries to help her, tries to be there for her, is always trying to help her find, therapists that would be helpful, or a support group, or information, just trying to always pick up, have her siblings back, right? Because not only does she really love her sibling, but she feels like it's up to her to be the strong one, to be the one that's so self-reliant that she has to be this doer, right? So then her sister, so let's say Crystal's sister, the imaginary person I'm making up here, is Molly. So her younger sister, Molly, has this struggle in life with substances. And Crystal is just doing and trying to take care of her, and is used to being the strong person, and she's pushing herself not only in her own life, but she's pushing herself to take care of this other person, because she's developed this pattern from her childhood to have really high expectations of what she can handle, to be so self-reliant. It's not easy for her to release that idea that it's all up to her. And so with her sister Molly, let's say her sister Molly is, deciding that that she's going to be a little self-destructive with her pattern with substances. And Crystal is getting to a point where she's realizing that she's feeling pretty just kind of used up in trying to help her sibling, the imaginary person I made up, Molly, survive life. And that she's just really almost using up her own energy for herself, her own energy for her life, her own energy for emotional well-being and everything, and trying to be there for Molly, because she just grew up thinking it was all up to her, grew up thinking that if she just pushed herself a little bit harder, she would be able to maintain whatever she needed to in life. And she just didn't understand sometimes there is nothing that we can do to make a situation work. No matter how much we use up ourselves, no matter how much we push ourselves beyond, it's not going to change what is happening. And you can't control other people, and you can't control certain things in life. And no matter how hard we will try to alter something by using our kind of will, our energy, our focus, you're not going to be able to change that. So let's just say that Crystal is realizing how used up she is feeling from trying to take care of her younger sister Molly, that has this substance issues and challenges in her life. And my imaginary person Crystal is really noticing that maybe she needs to surrender, which I think is a huge word. I don't think we have enough practice and teachings on the subject of just surrendering, rather than trying to push ourselves through something in life that sometimes there is no good solution. Sometimes, no matter how resilient we are, no matter how strong we are within ourselves, the strongest thing we can do for ourselves is to be gentle, is to be surrendered to the situation and realize that it's not up to us in every moment, that the most healthy on an emotional level and being there for ourselves is to let go, to surrender, let go, and realize we need to be gentle with ourselves and notice when when we have been pushing ourselves so hard and trying to do it all ourselves and trying to prove that we can be there for everybody or be good enough or be lovable enough, like that's not a sustainable, healthy, emotional pattern. It can end up affecting our health. It can affect our well-being on such a deep level. So Crystal's realizing she's starting to feel worn out. She's realizing that she's starting to feel like she's getting sick more easily. She feels just stressed. And so this is really starting to just cause Crystal to feel worn down within herself. And so when we have moments like that, where we start to really feel this, like we're hitting a wall within ourselves, and when we are starting to feel empty and kind of broken within ourselves because of a way we're relating with someone that we really love due to these internal issues, these patterns that were developed in the childhood, where maybe Crystal was really, because they had this environment dynamic within the family where they had a stepfather that was emotionally abusive and put them both down, and the mom was emotionally very unavailable, and so she then started caretaking towards the younger sibling, Molly, and it was hard on both of these people, right? These two little girls as they were growing up. So Crystal, as an adult, is here still trying to take care of her younger sister, Molly, still trying to be strong and self-reliant and resilient and push herself and feel lovable and worthy, and has identified with this pattern. So she gets to this point, this person I've made up, Molly and Crystal, the main person, becomes to a point where she is assessing her life, because she's realizing that she feels a little depressed. She's starting to get sick more often. Her energy level's really low, and she's feeling unhappy, and she's not sure why she's feeling at this place in her life. Like her job's good, maybe she has a relationship that feels pretty satisfying, and she's wondering, like, why am I so upset? Why am I feeling kind of empty and used up when I have a relatively satisfying qualities in areas within my own life? So let's say Crystal is having this internal dialogue, like, I'm feeling pretty good, and I don't understand why I have this feeling deep within the pit of my stomach and in my heart, where I feel kind of depressed and a little empty at times. And she's realizing it has to do with her sibling Molly, that she is living part of her life, part of her own energy level and well-being is really being taxed by emotionally trying to hold and be there for her younger sibling Molly that has these issues with substances. And she's like, wow, this is really emotionally a lot for me to try and hold. This is a lot for Crystal to try and accommodate for, always trying to find help for Molly, trying to caretake for Molly, trying to find her some sort of support system out within the world. And she's realizing she can't do it anymore. She's understanding that this pattern is really unhealthy for her. So Crystal's looking at this situation, and she's deciding that she has to find a way to let this pattern go that she is doing for her younger sibling Molly, for her own just survival within herself, her own life, to really be present within her relationship that has these good qualities to it, that she's realizing that for her own health, that she needs to have more of her own energy to have vibrance within her own life, and that she has to surrender this and let it go and be gentle with herself, because she realizes she has to be gentle with herself because this is a big deal. She really loves her sister Molly, but she can't control what Molly's going to do. Molly is going to do whatever she decides to do, and as painful as that is, when we have people that we love very, very much, if they decide to do something that's self-destructive, to do something that might cause themselves harm, we can't, they have their free will, we can't stop that. We can't make them do what we want. And so Crystal's like, well, I'm going to have to step back and surrender to the situation. So when we let something go, as painful as that may be, I think it's important to recognize that there are certain things in life, there are moments in life, whether it's people or a particular situation, we are not going to be able to control that situation. And looking at the healthiest thing to do, not only for that person and ourselves, when we let ourselves surrender the situation, let it go, we empower that person to, sometimes they got to hit rock bottom. And I know empowerment doesn't sound like the right word, but it is, because what it can lead towards is when they are allowed to not be enabled in any way or supported in a way that maybe keeps them from feeling the complete discomfort of their self-harm type of pattern maybe they're doing. When we let them just fully do their thing, as painful as that may be, when you let them just really experience it, it allows them to be empowered to make the choice of, wow, maybe I need to stop that. Maybe they realize that their life is, ending up in a place that is very uncomfortable, maybe very alone, maybe they lose their job, maybe something significant has to happen for them to really shift. So by surrendering and letting them have their life, and then, so Crystal, my imaginary person I made up today, can then look at, well, this is really difficult for me. This is really painful for me to watch my, this imaginary scenario I made up, her imaginary sibling Molly, to go through these things. But she decided, okay, I'm going to surrender. I'm going to tell Molly, here are all the phone numbers and all the support systems that I recommend. And I'm realizing that I need to step back to take care of myself, because it's really hard for me to watch you do this. And I am going to step back. I'm going to take this space. But here, there's a whole bunch of numbers. Here's the number of, this particular hotline for help with this agency, maybe, support groups. There's other people you can call. Here's a really great therapist that specializes in this. And just give them this information and say, I'm stepping back because watching you hurt yourself in this way is too painful for me, because I love you so much. And I think when we give people that message of, I love you so much that I can't watch you do this, what does that do to people? I think sometimes when we're trying to get through to someone, that can be one of the most powerful things you can do in that moment. So you surrender, and Crystal decides to, tell her sister this. I'm going to let this go. I'm going to give this over to you. So she surrenders all of the responsibility of this to her younger sister Molly. And how powerful is that? Because then Molly can be fully responsible for her choices. She can be really feel it, the impact of she is making this choice to either kind of go off the deep end, or she also has the power, the empowerment, the choice to maybe realize that she needs to make some big changes, because maybe her older sister Crystal is such a big deal to her that she's like, wow, this is one of the most important people in my life. And so maybe when she feels Crystal pull back, Molly is like, really can feel that deep in her being. And she recognizes that it's like a wake-up call. Sometimes we really have to have those wake-up calls in our lives, right? So by Crystal taking care of herself, stepping back and saying, I need to surrender this for my own heart, for my own well-being, for my own health and my own life, to let Molly make this choice. And if she decides to go off the deep end and, maybe it ends really in a bad way, understanding and recognizing, Crystal's like, I can't control that. So it's really a powerful crossroads for both of them in their lives, for Molly and Crystal. So Crystal pulls back, and then she's realizing she needs to be gentle with herself. Now again, my name's Michelle Love. You're listening to Dynamic Change on KPCALP in Petaluma. And I am making up this imaginary story to break down psychological and emotional patterns. And the characters I made up for today are Crystal and her younger sister Molly. Crystal and Molly grew up with not having an emotional support system within the family unit. They had a stepfather that was verbally abusive and put them down, and then they had a mom that was emotionally unavailable, and so they felt like they just had to kind of take care of themselves. Crystal ended up being rather parental towards her younger sister Molly, and being so self-reliant, so feeling like she had to carry the burden of whatever came up in life, and it was all up to her because she didn't feel a support system as a child. And she was proving to herself that she was good enough and lovable enough because she was verbally put down by the stepfather. So she is always trying to be strong and kind of that hero, being the hero in life, and the support structure for her younger sister Molly. And Molly has substance abuse issues. So Crystal has decided to surrender Molly to her decisions in her life and step back, because it is really taxing on her own well-being to try to save Molly from her choice of having substance issues. So Crystal has told her sister, I am stepping back from this, and this is why it is too painful for me, and I'm doing good in my life, but I notice that I'm feeling just really upset and concerned for you, and because these things you're doing in your life, and so I'm just going to step back. Here's some numbers where you can get help. This is some support structures within the community, and I'm going to check on you in a couple months. I love you so much, but I know you are a strong person, that you can make really empowered decisions. I know that you know what you need and that you can figure this out. And I believe in you, and I love you so much, no matter what you do. But I know you can do it. And I know I can't do it for you. And so Crystal pulls back. And then Crystal decides to be gentle with herself. So this being gentle with yourself when you're used to being so strong all the time, so trying to do more than what is really kind of reasonable within life. Crystal's always pushed herself so far, and she's like, wow, okay, I'm really proud of myself. I let Molly just have her experience. I am recognizing that in order to take care of my own inner child, to take care of my own well-being, that to let Molly do this is a really big deal. And now she's feeling really just emotional. She's feeling really very kind of raw, has all this grief come up, because who knows, Molly could totally tank, right? Maybe Molly does not do well. And that's part of the surrendering, is we cannot control certain things in life. And so Crystal has to, for her, it feels like she has to kind of mourn and grieve whatever ends up happening with her younger sister Molly that I've made up this character. So Crystal's like, oh, wow, the possibility is she could not do well. The possibilities are maybe she does get better. Possibility is maybe she completely decides not to get better. And Crystal has no control over that. And so she is just realizing that she's going to have to accept. There's a certain level of acceptance and grief that comes up when we do this type of work within our lives. And I think these kind of scenarios often come up in many of our lives. I think this is very common, and it can come up, in different ways. It can be someone we know, it can be a family member. We cannot control things in life. We can control our reactions to life. We can control ourselves, but we can't control other people. We can't control certain events. And I think it's one of the more challenging things to come up against in life. I think one of the really big challenging things in life lessons, is learning to love yourself. And second, knowing when you got to surrender in order to really kind of survive and take care of yourself within life. It's kind of like dealing with death. We can't control that either, right? These are these big things in life. And so for Crystal, my imaginary character I made up today, she is like, wow, this is like dealing with death almost. I'm letting my sister just be in charge of her path, and in doing that, releasing and surrendering that. For Crystal, her experience is like, wow, this is like accepting Molly could end up not doing well because she has some serious issues. She has some serious substance issues, that this is pretty substantially risky, kind of behavior that she could end up not thriving, and in a very big way. So Crystal has to allow herself to be very gentle. So maybe she calls into work for a couple of days, and she can even call work and say, I'm having a family emergency, and I need to take 3 or 4 days off. And she tells her partner in her relationship, be gentle with me. I'm kind of really going through some stuff, and I'm probably gonna, just need to cry a bunch and hide out and take this space. And, if you want to come bring me some food, or, kind of like a a little care basket of nice nurturing things, I'm open to that. Leave it on the doorstep, but I may just need to hide for a couple days because I'm probably just gonna kind of break down, and allow that, because sometimes we need to break down. Sometimes we need to realize that when we have to step back in life and let something go that has been such a big responsibility, such a big maybe codependent action that we were doing towards someone, that's a big deal. Releasing a big pattern is almost like experiencing death sometimes. When we are letting go of something that is so big, that was so monumental in our life, that it feels like you went through a death, that you are releasing something that has the same emotional impact, that brings up grief, that brings up the unknown. So when we are dealing with a pattern that is that intense, death, I think why it's so hard for people is it's this unknown, this out of control, this extreme event. So when we are surrendering something this big, something that, Crystal loves to such an intense extent within herself, when we come up against those kind of crossroads in life, for Crystal, this is a big deal. This is like someone dying, potentially dying. I think it has the same emotional impact. So to recognize when we are dealing with these huge events within our lives, these huge crossroads where we recognize that there is no control, that it is this big unknown thing, and we do have to find a way to survive this moment. Like, wow, this is a big deal. So again, my name is Michelle Love, and I guess I'm talking about a pretty heavy topic today. And my example, so you're listening to KPCALP in Petaluma. I'm talking about when we come up against crossroads in life. And I have these two imaginary people I made up. The main character, her name is Crystal, and her younger sibling, Molly. I made up these two characters, and Molly has substance abuse issues. And they grew up with a family dynamic that I'm using as an example of, they had a stepfather that was verbally abusive, put them down, and the mom was very unavailable on an emotional level. Crystal grew up being extremely self-reliant, feeling like they had to take care of everything, felt like they had to parent Molly. Molly emotionally struggled through life. She developed substance abuse issues and did not thrive well in life. And so Crystal is realizing that she can no longer try to make Molly survive life, do well, not do substances, and Crystal's having to pull back and set some boundaries in order to take care of herself and let Molly find the help she needs, and rather than Crystal trying to make it about she is the solution by sacrificing herself to somehow try to control the situation by giving way too much of herself, her energy, her emotional focus, her trying to always catch Molly when she's falling. She's realizing that she has to step back to take care of herself and surrender and give that fully over to Molly, that responsibility, because it is Molly's choice. It is Molly's own will of her own path in her life. So Crystal has surrendered that and told her sibling, I love you. I release you to deciding how, your choice. You're going to do what you're going to do with this. And here are some places you can find help. And so this is a huge deal. So Crystal tells Molly she's letting her have this path because it's too painful for her to watch it. And Molly can experience the kind of emptiness that is created when Crystal steps back. And so Crystal, I'll speak first to Crystal's experience. You know, so she creates this safe net for herself. She tells her partner she's gonna, need some gentleness, some kindness, and she might need a shoulder to cry on, but she's gonna take some days off and hide from everybody. And maybe she just watches really sad stuff on the television that she knows is gonna make her cry, and just cries a bunch, grieves a bunch. Maybe she just needs to call in for some food, to be brought, maybe it's going to be pizza that day. And she's not going to cook at all. She's just going to allow herself to sit there and not have to go anywhere, not have to go to work. Maybe she has a pet. She's going to just sit with her pet, be really quiet, cry a bunch. And after a couple of days of just allowing yourself to sleep and cry and not having to do anything, and just manage that kind of gentleness within herself, take a hot bath, do some journaling. Maybe she has a therapist she talks to. She contacted her therapist and say, can I do an emergency session? And she got to do a Zoom with her therapist, and she told her, look, I decided to release my sister and step back from that situation. And so she's just doing these things to take care of herself, and reaching out to her friends, say, look, can you do this errand for me? And just leave it on the doorstep. I'm not up to seeing anybody. And she just really taking that time to take care of herself and to really recognize that she has her own emotional needs, and she can't always be the strong one in every moment, and that's totally okay. She's totally lovable. She's totally good enough if she's not strong. Like, the strength is recognizing that you are lovable, recognizing that you are good enough in all moments, recognizing that she is so wonderful. So Crystal steps back from this situation, and that is the strength. So when we are in life and we have these challenging situations, I think the real strength is seeing the truth of life. When we are able to find that love for ourselves, find that gentleness, find that safe container for ourselves, that is the real strength in life. Is we can only take care of ourselves first. And when we are realizing that life is about finding that 100% of what we need and making that the focus, when we do that and we step away from these things that are too much for us in lives, that we can't be 100% for anybody if we are not 100% for ourselves first. That way we are 100% vibrant within ourselves, and then, at some point we have extra amount of energy and emotional space and everything where we can go beyond ourselves and help people. What the real strength and powerful lesson is to do that for ourselves first. And when we do that, not only are we going to feel whole within ourselves, not only are we going to heal things, patterns from the childhood, heal these really deep voids within ourselves. So Crystal can feel that she's filling up her own void, her own space within herself that needs to be nourished, that needs to feel like Crystal needs to feel that she can ask for help when she needs help, that she can be there for herself when she feels powerless. with this, within her relationship with her sibling Molly, that she can have relief from that kind of stress, from that kind of emotional pain that can be all consuming. So for Crystal, this is a big deal. And she is feeling this pain that feels like death, that feels like this void within. And looking at her coming to grips with, how can I nourish this wound? How can I nourish this pain from the childhood of, what happens? So Crystal's pattern, what happens? The fear. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the childhood fear. So the childhood fear is, what happens if Crystal isn't the person that is trying to keep the unknown at bay? So when Crystal is the strong one, when Crystal is in charge of trying to keep everything okay. So that's part of the void and the wound from the childhood. She's trying to keep everything okay. She's trying to stave off pain from feeling like no one is there. So feeling the emotional kind of abandonment maybe she felt because the mother was very emotionally unavailable. The abandonment she felt from not feeling loving, kindness from the stepfather because he was verbally abusive and put her down. So Crystal's feeling like there's this level of distraction, this defense mechanism that came out of all of that, of being so strong, because if Crystal's not strong, if Crystal's not putting that burden on top of her shoulders of, I can take care of me and Molly, I can always, pick up the slack, I can try to make everything feel okay. If she's not doing that pattern, then what is she going to be feeling? So that pain from the childhood is also going to come up. That pain of feeling abandoned, maybe emotionally abandoned, feeling not good enough, not lovable enough. And that's why she was running that pattern of being this kind of the hero, being as strong as possible, being self-reliant where she didn't need anybody. Because if she didn't need anybody, then she's not going to feel that abandonment. Then she's not going to feel that I'm not lovable enough. So Crystal has this pattern of, there's so much grief that comes up from surrendering, trying to save her younger sister Molly that I made up, right? And so this imaginary person Crystal is feeling not only the grief of releasing Molly, it's also this grief and this void and this emptiness from the childhood of feeling like it was all up to Crystal. So there's this void, and then so she feels kind of this void within, this hole that needs to be filled up with good things. She's acknowledged there's pain there, and she talks to her therapist about it, and she did really good. She was able to realize, like, wow, not only is this a huge deal, and I feel like there's this like death situation I did with my sister, but I'm also feeling that there is this really intense amount of pain from the childhood of abandonment, of not receiving enough love and nurturing, and not feeling lovable and not feeling seen, or like someone was there for, like Crystal felt like no one was there for her, right? So this was really profound. So Crystal, in talking to her therapist, maybe her therapist recommended, well, keep taking space for yourself, keep nurturing yourself, so you're nurturing your inner child, keep taking baths, keep taking, maybe time off from work when you just feel like you need to grieve, keep asking people for help. So maybe the therapist says, just reach out to your really close friends just through text, so you just have some emotional distance, because sometimes you just need that space, right? When you feel like there's so much you're processing, but you can still ask for help and say, I'm processing some heavy stuff that kind of came up with me, with my sister. Can you do these things for me? And maybe they ask, can you pick up some groceries from the store for me? Maybe can you get me lunch or make me lunch or whatever? Like, call in the favors, because maybe Crystal was such a doer that she helped people a lot. So she can ask for some help and continue to be gentle with herself, continue to not require so much of herself as she's healing these wounds and filling them up with good things, filling them up with nurturing, filling them up with allowing others to carry the load. So this is Crystal's experience, and she's going to continue to talk to her therapist about it. She's going to continue to move slowly. She's going to continue to take breaks and reach out and ask for help. So there's Crystal, and we're going to kind of complete Crystal's experience, my imaginary person, and I want to complete with Molly. So with Molly feels her sister pull back, and there's this void, and Molly has these substance abuse issues, my imaginary younger sibling of Crystal. And Molly is this lovely, sensitive, emotional person that just had a hard time being resilient with the patterns they grew up with. And so Molly realizes that her sister has given her the feedback, and that she could not watch Molly. Crystal has told her, I cannot watch you hurt yourself with these substances anymore. And so Molly has to sit with and really feel this void of what was kind of being filled up, her own personal void and wound that she feels, is trying to avoid, was trying to fill that wound up with substance. But Crystal was also filling up that void. She was taking some of the pain away. So when Crystal, her sister, pulls back, and Molly's like, wow, now I really feel it, and maybe she goes on a bender for a couple of days, right, and uses more substances, but she is acknowledging that there's so much pain, and maybe she wakes up from the bender and she feels like wow, I really hit rock bottom, and I feel so empty inside. And she realizes, I really, really need to get some help. My sister Crystal, gave me all these ways I can find help. I can reach out. Here's a phone number. Here's a group. Here's, a program. Maybe it's a substance abuse program. And Molly realizes that the pain is so great now that her sister has stepped away and allowed her to fully feel her pain, that maybe she's like, oh wow, this is like more than I can bear. And she realizes that she's scared. She realizes that she really needs help. So Molly decides to check into the treatment center that Crystal told her about. That's a free program. Maybe it's a work program. So you get free help, but you also do work for your stay there. And they help you get a job or whatever it is. So Molly goes into this work program, and she gets that help. And she's in this environment where there's other people going through the same stuff. She's getting regular therapy. She's feeling empowered because, she's getting a job and she can be successful. She can be in a place where she doesn't feel judged because everyone's processing the same challenges. And she's going to groups every day, and she recognizes that this is okay. Other people have the same kind of issues, and she's realizing the stuff she needs to work on from their childhood. And she's recognizing how destructive her life was, and that it was getting really serious, and she could have ended up dying. So, you know, this could have really be the path that Molly ended up taking. So sometimes when we surrender in life, when Crystal surrendered her, just surrendered to the lack of control, that was the reality of this situation. And so when Crystal took care of herself, not only is she going to thrive and heal her own wounds, but she is allowing her younger sister, Molly, to experience the totality of her own pain and patterns, which can sometimes help empower somebody to make a better choice. Because if we enable them and help them feel a little more comfortable, sometimes it does not help them. Sometimes the most powerful, the most empowering thing we can do is to allow them to feel the totality of what they are doing. So that's my story. I know it was kind of like a really, in my opinion, a very powerful story, but I think life is powerful. I think it has, you know, these things that come up that feel like death in life because they're so emotionally challenging, especially when we're dealing with something that feels like, you know, we feel helpless to save people that we love so much. But it's important to talk about it. I think it's important to understand when we have to release and surrender, and how can we maybe end up help facilitating someone making a better choice by allowing them to go through what they need to go through. And so I want to share the story with the happy ending because I have known stories like this in life, and I know they're possible. I know they're obtainable. I know that people that are going through stuff can rise to the occasion. And if we hold that vision for them, if people like Crystal hold that kind of empowered vision for people like Molly in their life, that you are supporting the vision of their healing. You are supporting it in your body by imagining in your body, just feel it for them. So it's like having faith, it's like having hope. And I think it's very, very powerful. When we focus on negativity, you give strength to the negativity. When we focus on something that is empowering, when you focus on, I believe they can do it, I'm going to see them as healthy in my mind, you are holding up that belief for that person that may be a huge benefit to them. So when we continue to tell them, I know you can do it, I know you are powerful, I know you know what you need, here you go, here's some solutions, and hold that power for them, you are really upholding a support structure on many levels. And just imagine in your body, imagine how it would feel. You can process the death of the situation, right? Process the grief. You know, Crystal had to go through all that, but also at the end of this, she allowed herself to grieve. She also acknowledged that she's going to hold up this imagining of how would it feel if I saw my imaginary sister Molly heal, and if she got so much better, she's going to hold the emotional quality in her body, which I think what we are processing in our emotional being helps other people in our lives. You know, when we are thriving and generating this positive feeling, people in our lives are going to feel it. So she's going to imagine in her body that Molly is healing, that she got help, that she is thriving, and she's going to focus on that every day. She's going to focus on her sister being strong, and this helps Molly. So when we do this in life, we are bringing empowerment to other people through our focus. So that's the end of my story that I made up with these imaginary people, Crystal and Molly. I'm going to read to you an announcement real quick about one of the shows here at KPCA LP in Petaluma. And this show is called 8 O'Clock Rock Show. It's on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. to 10 p.m., hosted by Greg Randall. The show features Greg Randall picking all the music you need to hear from all decades of rock and roll and its roots. Spinning selections from his own collection, he will crossfade the pioneers of rock and roll with punk, power pop, garage, Americana, indie rock, blues, glam, and beyond, with one mission: to save rock and roll one record at a time. I love that. I love that he does punk. Punk is one of my favorites. So, I am so grateful for just having those wonderful times in life where we learn these really powerful lessons. I hope you have enjoyed the examples that I created today for this show of sometimes when we go through really intense experiences in life, and I hope these ideas stimulate some ways you can handle this type of things that come up, and how you can take care of yourself and surrender and grow and heal. You have a wonderful day. Thank you for tuning in to Dynamic Change. You can always go to my website, dynamicchange.wellness.com, to see all the different types of services I provide. Have a wonderful week. Thank you. Bye-bye now.